Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Hewitt, and welcome to the EMEA press conference for The King's Man. I'm delighted to be joined by the stars of the film, Tom Hollander, Rhys Ifans, Harris Dickinson, Gemma Arterton, Djimon Hounso, Ray Fiennes, and of course, the film's writer-director, the king of The Kingsman, Mr. Matthew Vaughn. Welcome all. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Very well.
Hi. Very good. Woo.
Excellent.
I feel like, those terrorists. Yeah, we're really good. We're really good. What's the next question?
The chaos has begun already. I shouldn't have asked such an open-ended question.
Exactly.
Matthew, behave.
Do we have to hold up a newspaper to prove the date?
We do. Keep an eye on Matthew Vaughn. He may be trouble. So I'm going to ask questions individually of each of you. For the journalists who are watching this, if you have questions for our esteemed panel, get them in now using the chat function, and I will get to them in about 5-10 minutes or so. So, Tom.
Hello.
Tom Hollander, I wanted to start with you because you play 3 roles in this movie. You play Tsar Nicholas II, you play Kaiser Wilhelm, and King George V as well. How did you keep track of those roles and of the different accents?
Well, they're all distinct characters. They tended not to be filmed on the same day, and each time I went into one of those characters, there was a few hours in makeup.
Why were they not on the same day, Tom?
Am I being heckled by Matthew already? What did you say?
No, I was saying why they weren't on the same day because you refused to change your bloody beard.
I'm not sure what he said, but I think it sounded
it was I was declaring my love, Tom. Sorry.
They were all there was a full makeup job for each character, so there was plenty of time to know which one I was playing. Sometimes it was hard if I was playing the German and the Russian character too close to each other. That was tricky to distinguish sometimes the accent. That was hard for me. But they are all 3 different men, and it was there's plenty to distinguish them as people, though they're obviously very good joke of Matthew's that they are from the same gene pool, they're first cousins, and that they should all be played by one person, because the First World War is at one level just a family squabble which drags the rest of the world into it.
Absolutely. Matthew was complimenting your beard work, by the way.
I see, and yes, well, Jenny Sherkaw's, yeah. Well, but my own beard is yes.
That was all due to Rafe, Jenny. Thank God you introduced me. I really mean that.
Excellent. And Rhys, you also have a fantastic, just big bushy beard in this as Rasputin, the Mad Monk, real life figure, of course. So talk me through your research process for this. Where did you begin?
Well, obviously, I was aware of Rasputin, the figure, and was quite familiar with. He's someone I've been mildly interested in, since school, really. Since when we studied the First World War in school, and there was always this figure of Rasputin who was more kind of mythical than factual, even in a history lesson. I've always been kind of intrigued by him, and he had this great look. Those early photographs of Rasputin, really early use of cameras. He seemed to be someone who was even then aware of the impact his own image might have in a photograph. He really does stare down the bottle. So he's always intrigued me, and there's a kind of because he was a mystic and a healer, there's this kind of performative element to him as a person. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the sense that he was able to grow up from a deeply impoverished upbringing and work his way through through Russian high society to a position of great power, power to start and end wars. in fact. So it's a great story. So yeah, he always intrigued me. And then and of course the look, you know, that long hair and the beard, in our case, stitched together from 45 merkins.
Only 45, huh? Okay.
Yeah. we didn't want to go too excessive.
Of course not. And you have this incredible fight scene as well with Rafe and with Djimon and with Harris. And I wanted to ask Djimon and Harris together about that and about filming the action scenes on this movie. Obviously, working closely with the late great Brad Allen on this movie.
Wow, that was quite a challenge going into it. You know, obviously the exciting part of me, you know, being part of this story is really the idea of wanting to work with Matthew for some time. And so when this came about, and also being on the foundational origin of the story itself, and with a smartly historical backdrop, you know, a look back into you know, into history, a part of history that I was not aware of, but I only learned about all this, you know, once I arrived in Europe. But I thought it was smartly done to bring awareness to that time, that period of time. And so, but the challenges of you know, doing it in action sequences in Matthew Vaughn's film was quite great. I did not know much about his hard work and how he's you know, quite demanding of our physical attributes in doing all these fight sequences. It was quite a challenge, and that came with a bit of pain, right? Early on in the filming, I got hurt and nursed the injury throughout the filming. So quite gratifying watching the finished product, and so that's the satisfying part of it.
Worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
And Harris, what about you? You haven't done a film like this before. You haven't done action like this before.
Yeah, I was the one that gave Djimon that injury, you know, during our sparring. So. No. I mean, listen, like, I feel so incredibly fortunate to have been a student of the stunt team, and like each of those like highly experienced practitioners is like, I don't know, it's something that I'll cherish, because I really didn't know anything going into it. So to go in and just be a student of them was amazing, and really like challenges you mentally and physically. So I'm grateful to have just been in that space, you know. And then and also like my 15, I said earlier, like to be sparring with like Djimon, my 15-year-old like fat little like kid watching like Gladiator and Never Back Down, and being inspired and wanting to, like, you know, get in shape and want to defend myself. He would be happy with this future self. Yeah.
That's amazing. And Gemma, we talked about real world figures being in this movie. Polly is not a real world figure, but she's very much a woman who is making strides and making waves in a world that even back then especially was really dominated by men. Did you draw inspiration from any real world figures, any real world female figures at the time?
Yeah, I mean, this is set sort of, you know, pre-World War I and during World War I, so it's sort of suffragette time, really. But I was inspired by the Bletchley Circle women, which is slightly later. It's World War II, but code crackers, and they were kind of nerds that were amazing women that were very behind the scenes. But no, she was very much a kind of, you know, inspired by all of the women that I grew up with, really, these working class women that just get on with it and work really hard and are solid. And yeah, I loved playing her. She was really good fun. You know, she is serious, but she's got a twinkle in her eye. So I like that.
Absolutely. And Rafe, Oxford is a really interesting hero because he's a pacifist. He's a man who has seen the horrors of war, the horrors of conflict, and he's
That's right.
determined not to make the same mistake. That's a really interesting wrinkle. How was it to play that aspect of
Well,
it?
that was a great proposal, if you like, in that part. And a man who is almost you would say ferocious pacifist. He's lost his wife, which is not a spoiler. We see it very early on in the movie. And he's brought up his son with the help of Polly, who Harris plays, Conrad. So I think as events unfold in the film, he recognizes there is a point where you actually have to pick up a weapon. But what's great about it, any role that has a big shift, a big gear change, it says to the audience, I'm this person, and I'm absolutely this, I'm never going to change. And then, of course, dramatically, I have to now completely change because this is how I now feel, and this is what's happened. And that dramatically is always a strong thing. And it was, when I read the script, that was very appealing to me, the way that Matthew tracks the story of Oxford. That was a great enticement.
And Matthew, obviously, you set the story of Oxford and Conrad against the backdrop of World War I. Why that decision to set this prequel against the backdrop of that war?
Well, Kingsman: The Secret Service made us do it that way. Harry explains to Eggsy why Kingsman was founded, and when and how and blah blah blah. So the story was already written in the sense of the folklore of Kingsman. So then, when I watched The Man Who Would Be King, I hadn't seen it for years, and I loved it. And I thought I'd like to make a movie like that and do The Man Who Would Be Kingsman. And then I had to find the Kingsman. Luckily, this gentleman on my left, after making me jump through fiery hoops of billions of very intelligent questions, which I had to answer, and thank God I did eventually. We went on this journey together, and I have to say this, I don't normally say this about my full cast, but they've all been wonderful. I learned a lot from all of you, and I've enjoyed working with all of you, even though I can hardly remember it, but I have fond memories.
Amazing. Yeah. Did you consider calling it The Man Who Would Be Kingsman at any point?
I'd love to. Actually, I did. That was the writing on the first thing I wrote in the script was The Man Who Would Be Kingsman. And we have a Kingsman in The Man Who Would Be Kingsman. We have Michael Caine. So,
that's true. Yeah.
Full circle.
All right. So now we have some questions that have been sent in from the journalists who are watching this press conference. If you want to have your question read out, then do send them in via the chat function. As the first one comes from Inês Mendes, who is from Sapo in Portugal, and this is for Matthew Vaughn. She says, apart from the fact that this is a period film, in what ways did you want this movie to be different from the previous two Kingsman films and still have the viewers recognize it as part of the same universe?
Well, it had to be different. I mean, if let's say Kingsman is the first two Kingsman was an adult Kingsman, but when you give birth to babies, and babies have to grow and become a man eventually. So this is about the nascent Kingsman. It is about the birth of Kingsman, and it has to come from something very different. And then hopefully we can all make another one together and go through history and show how the Kingsman that the first people saw gets to the point of Harry Hart saying, there's a reason why aristocrats develop weak chins and we need new blood. But that we've got about 8 decades to go through to get to that point. And but it had to be different. I always say, like, if you watch The Deer Hunter, imagine someone watching The Deer Hunter but not seeing the first hour. Those scenes would not have been as powerful. You didn't know the characters, and they had to go on a journey to really have the impact. So we've started a journey somewhere very different. But we do get some Kingsman tropes come up, but it had to be different.
All right. So we have a question now from Martina Barone from Italy, and this is for Rafe and Harris. And she asks, how did you work on the father-son relationship between Oxford and Conrad?
Harris, you can answer this first.
Well, I mean, I think we were just really lucky that we just got along naturally. It was very easy. I don't know. I felt like Matthew was very keen on us all rehearsing and getting plenty of time beforehand, right? I think that was really the key. It's always the key with any sort of relationship, I think, in film is getting time to sit down and just talk and talk about your characters together. Otherwise it just feels so abrupt when you get on set otherwise. But
also I think on the page it was
you know, you get some scripts and you might scratch your head and go, what's the relationship here, or what's going on? Or but I think it was very clearly drawn. And I think once we were reading it, I think between Harris, who I have to say is wonderful to work with and totally wonderfully intuitively truthful actor. So it was lovely to work with his energy and his sensitivity. And I think with Matthew guiding us, I think really we didn't, it just, you know, what you really want with the script is that the actors, it just emerges. They read, they learn the lines, they start to play, and suddenly stuff happens between them. And with Matthew guiding us, I think that's where the relationship between us as father and son developed.
There's also the extended family as well. I think Polly and Shola would be part of Oxford's family. Did the four of you spend time together before the shoot as well to get that sense of that lived-in chemistry that they've spent years together before the movie properly begins?
We all went on holiday.
I wish.
We all got promised a holiday in Barbados, but I never quite know.
I don't remember. I feel like we probably had a bit of rehearsal together.
Yeah.
But I think we were all bringing a little bit of ourselves to these roles, I guess, and there was a natural chemistry, the right kind of chemistry between each of us. Like I felt like our chemistry was right, and mine and Rafe's and mine and Djimon. So yeah, it just felt very, very natural. It didn't feel like we had to work too hard at it.
No.
And
they liked each other, which helps. I think it really does help.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's move on. Then we have a question now from Gunnar Orelin from TT in Sweden. This is for Rafe. He says, Rafe, you've done action films before, but not really any action like this. Is this something you've longed for, to unleash that inner action hero?
Absolutely. I've had a few failed attempts, possibly. But when I've always loved stage fighting or any kind of, you know, fictional sword fighting. Like you get to do quite a bit in the theatre, often in Shakespeare plays. And when I was at drama school, we had an event called the Prize Fights, which I think I managed to win something with my other partner, Ian Glenn, the actor Ian Glenn. Together we did a fight. Wow. So I've always, and then leaving the sword play of Shakespeare, not many films have offered me the chance, except I read this, and at the end of this film there is my character, Duke of Oxford, is required to defend himself with a sword in an extended sword play sequence. So that was, so I guess, and there's a little boy in me that just likes a good sword fight. And I like all those Errol Flynn, Basil Rathbone, Robin Hood, all that stuff. And if you look at the sword play then, those actors in that era, they must have all done fencing. They are extraordinary. There's a great fight between Tyrone Power and Basil Rathbone in some old film, which is an amazing film. I have to say, I got to sort of acknowledge the skill of the stunt team, and I have no shame or apology for a stunt double is used, and they are brilliant, and they make us look very good. And we did our work, but you know, it's the two meet, the stunt team and the actors. So
but what was incredible for Rafe was when there was one in the sequence where you have to use your strength to climb up, and it was an homage to Jackie Chan, and this bugger could do it with his yoga and stuff. The strength he had, we were really, I was astonished. So he was, you know, very impressive. He was, you know,
it's all about the core.
And you hung on, you know,
core.
Spinning around. Yeah, your core's good.
Core Kingsman.
Yeah, exactly. Kingsman in his core, to the core.
Absolutely. All of you take part, not to give too many spoilers away, obviously, but all of you take part in this movie in fight scenes, except for Tom. Tom, did you feel left out?
Yeah, terribly left out. Nobody ever asked me to do fight sequences.
But the sequel,
very unfair.
Tom, I will quote you on that in the sequel. So when we give you this, the fight of all fights, you will fight each other.
Oh, good. Will I win it, Matthew? Or will
you'll win it. You'll be shoving a scepter up somewhere. Anyway, carry on.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
This press conference, there is a sequel, and I will win the fights.
Yeah, you will win the fights. That is legally binding.
Okay, well, I'm going to go off and do some press ups.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Get the core right.
Fighting.
Did a side link actually this morning.
There'll be a scepter and an orb. It will be your weapons.
And let's just leave the rest to the imagination, Matthew. Let's just leave the rest there. And just a couple of last questions. Gemma, how was the cheese scene to film?
Oh, for God's sake, I knew you were going to ask me about that. And the cheese scene was, it was It was pretty messy. It was custard, ambrosia custard, I'm sure. And I remember now, we did it, and that was one thing. And then Matthew saw the rushes and went, oh, there's not enough cheese. So let's do it again. And so we had to do it again with loads more custard.
I remember walking past you and you were like, don't even say it.
I mean, it was pretty gross. Yeah, thanks for that, Matthew.
You're welcome.
And we have a question from Jed Weigeman from the UK, and this is for you, Matthew. He asks, why did you feel a prequel would be the best place for the franchise to go next rather than the Kingsman 3?
It wasn't really planned about what was best for the franchise or next. It was just what I really wanted to do, and I just thought it was time to try and make an epic adventure historical movie. And as much as I loved the DC and Marvel and these big superhero movies, they are so CG based and all have a certain style, which is, we say, relatable to each other. And I thought, let's try and do something different. And it's creativity is a weird thing, because I think decisions are made for you, whether you like it or not. You've creatively, something kicks in, and well, for me it does. And I don't know why I'm on the journey, but I just get on it and ride and see where it takes us. So it was purely an itch that I had to scratch hard.
And is this something that you can see maybe developing along parallel tracks? You have the Kingsman franchise.
I'd love to go through history of the Kingsman and go, because history kept getting more and more interesting, should we say? But the history of espionage is fascinating.
So the last question comes from Secret de Camp from Belgium. She asks, can we expect more adventures of the Kingsman in the future with this team? Would you be up for that, guys?
Again, last answer.
Yeah. Rafe, would you be up for that?
Absolutely. I've just been talking about what's going to happen, Matthew, and I want another good sword fight, please. So I was just thinking maybe Tom and I could be like fighting not against each other but together in the scene.
I think it'd be great.
The Duke and the King fending off the re-emergent Rasputin.
We can come up with some fun things.
Yeah. Yes,
I know where that scepter would go.
Yes.
Listen, and there's room for more.
He has a phrase of squeezing things in. That's all I'll say. He's squeezing in the premiere at the moment. So.
All right. Well, I think on that note, on that bombshell, that is it for the EMEA press conference for The King's Man. Thank you, of course, for joining us, and thank you indeed to our incredible panel: Tom Hollander, Rhys Ifans, Harris Dickinson, Djimon Hounso, Gemma Arterton, Ray Fiennes, and of course Matthew Vaughn. The film is out on December 26th. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.